I'm here with Min Ju, and she is awesome because she works on the Google X project. So can you tell us a bit more about yourself?
Absolutely. So I study material science and engineering at UC Berkeley, and while I was studying material science, I was always really fascinated with engineering. But surprisingly, when I came to college, I didn't want to be an engineer when I first got there because I thought it's just not something that was in my head. It's not something that was presented to me as an option when I was applying to colleges, but I looked all around me and I noticed that actually several of my colleagues were intended engineering majors. And I was thinking, hey, I'm good at math, I'm good at sciences, hey, I can be an engineer too. So I started taking engineering classes, and then so I was starting to do that basic physics, basic math. When I settled to become a material scientist, I actually studied abroad at University of Cambridge in the United Kingdom, and that's when I was like, I'm going to take whatever class I want, and it's like, hey, I don't know what that means, so I'm going to take it, and it actually ended up being the most fascinating class where the professor talked about anything from like skateboard material to buildings to different types of steels to different types of glass, and I was thinking, wow, I took all of this for granted, but there's just so much thought and engineering that goes into manufacturing anything that's physical, and even certain things that are not physical, such as nanotechnology, which is the hot topic nowadays. So I got really engrossed by the topic, and then when I returned back to UC Berkeley, I decided, okay, I'm gonna study material science. So I got my degree in material science, and I also worked on a couple really neat projects, such as biomaterials for producing artificial tissue material, like for instance, producing an artificial heart. If you have a heart attack and if you can't regrow a heart, so you have to do an artificial tissue. So I was working on that project. I also worked on a couple semiconductor projects. For instance, I worked on a solar car project where I was actually encapsulating the whole material on my own, as well as producing some laser chips for another internship. I also worked on a startup where I was helping them try to create novel materials that would drastically reduce the cost of producing some electronic, because in the electronics, a lot of silver is used to try to join the materials together and for the conductivity, but silver, as you know, is very expensive. So I also worked on that project where we were trying to use other materials that do the same thing, but they're a little bit cheaper, so it brings down the cost of, for instance, solar cells. But eventually, actually, this is a very insane story because no one really believes me, but I got an email one day from a Google person asking, hey, do you want to work on this project? And it doesn't happen to very many people. I was insanely lucky. I think I had a couple friends who were at Google who had passed around my resume, and then it had reached that person, and the person was interested in my background in material science, and I said, yeah, like I'm super interested. So I ended up joining Project Loon that way. Again, not a lot of people joined that way, but I was insanely lucky. So I was solicited via the actual group itself. So what I do for Project Loon is I work on the balloon team. So Project Loon is a project that's hoping to provide internet connectivity to developing regions. So that could be places that are just really rural. So a lot of companies are not incentivized to put cables underneath the ground, so that's very expensive. Or some countries or some regions, they just don't have enough money to pay for all of that. Some countries, they have the money, but the land is not ideal. For instance, take Philippines, for example. They have the money, so they can create the infrastructure, but because they're made out of thousands of islands, it's not very ideal to try to dig up all of that to put in the infrastructure. So in some of those cases, it is actually very optimal to try to put the internet connectivity in the sky, where it's 20 kilometers up in the sky in the stratosphere, and you're creating these network mesh for people to then connect back to the ground. So that's what the project is. And the vehicle of delivery of this internet is the balloon itself. So my background in polymers is very helpful in this situation, where we're trying to design a better balloon, use the better materials to make this balloon, as well as try to triage any problems that might come after designing this balloon, because we always know that there's always some things that can be made better. So that's what my job is. We're always trying to make it better.
Wow. I'm speechless. I really am speechless. So I'm really curious, and feel free to say no to this question, but you've done so much, you've done it for several lifetimes. So how old are you?
Oh, how old am I? I just turned 23.
23! Oh my god, 23!
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I was just really curious. I wanted to try everything.
This is, you're my idol. You're my current idol right now. So I want to ask you, you've worked on so many projects. Do you have one that's like closer to your soul? Do you have one that you really love?
Absolutely. So actually, this sounds really cheesy, but Project Loon absolutely is near and dear. You know, just like any other project, there's ups and downs, and even on some times where I was thinking, oh, this project sucks, like I'm really unhappy about some things, I never quit just because the greater mission of trying to bring internet to areas that don't have internet access, I thought that was a really noble sense of purpose. So that's why I still remain on the project. So I've been on the project for a year and a half now, and I don't have any desires to leave the project right away. But additionally, one of my most favorite activity that's near and dear to my heart is the research I did with the biomaterials, where we're trying to regrow the artificial tissue, because it's definitely going to be the future where we can extend not only the lifespan but also the quality of living for most people. Where it's sure people can sometimes make choices that leads them to an illness, but in some cases it's genetic too. So it's not like they chose to have a bad heart, you know. So and some people are also born with that, where they're just born with the bad heart because that's just their parents passed it on. And I think it's just a really unfortunate fact of life, but it's something that with technology we can change. So I was working on this artificial surface. It's a synthetic material where you can see the stem cells on it, and then a biologist then, this is not my expertise, I just make the material, and then the stem cell biologist will then differentiate those cells into heart tissue. But to me that was incredibly fulfilling, because to know that one day we can essentially 3D print a heart, I think that's there's a lot of things that we need to do to get there, but I think definitely someone needs to take the first step, and I'm hoping that I can look back and say, well, I contributed one little bit, but it's still a step towards the right direction, nevertheless.
You contributed a whole lot, a whole lot. So after all this experience and at just 23 years old, what would you say would you say are the next steps for you? What do you want for your future?
Absolutely.
What's your next step?
So thankfully, right now I have a great manager, great mentors at my work. So I definitely want to grow as an engineer. So my role right now is technical program management. So I'm not doing the day-to-day engineering. However, I do still learn a decent amount of technology and engineering. So I definitely want to grow, because there's a lot of things I still don't know. So I definitely want to grow as an engineer, but I also want to grow as a mentor, as a mentee as well, because I'm also getting a lot of mentorship where I can, because I think ultimately the most important thing to me is like a sense of community, and to think that it's no matter how big or small, I made an impact on someone's life to make their life a little bit better. So whether that is continuing on with Project Loon, which is my immediate plan, but long-term plan, whether it's joining a different company or doing a research or doing whatever that may be, I think working on a project that I know is going to make someone's life better is going to be my ultimate calling.
That's just awesome. So the reason why I disappeared from the shot was because I forgot a little codette, which I give to each and every one of the speakers in this mini interview, and I'd like to give it to you as a remembrance.
Thank you. I appreciate this.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye.